'Cause I'm 6 feet from the edge.
Is he just fucking singing Creed all day? What's happening? Is that Creed? What is that?
You're asking me that? Of course it's Creed. Creed's the best.
Why are you singing so much Creed?
Because it's Creed.
Okay.
Trying to have a good time.
Trying to have a good time.
Trying to share my emotions with the world.
Yeah, okay.
Also,
I get it.
The ladies love it. What do we
With
do?
arms wide open.
See, the ladies love it.
It's not bad. The Black Cherry Nude is not bad.
You know what you know what it makes me feel like? Like I'm 6 feet from the edge of the...
Ian and I are both here because we want to talk to you about some of the philosophies around list building. But if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe. Help us hit our 10,000 person goal. We're up over 5,000 subscribers now, and we're feeling really awesome about it. We are gunning for the 10,000 sub mark.
Can you take us higher?
Is that the Creed
It's
lyrics?
more Creed, yeah.
Okay, anyways. All right, so today what's going to happen is we're actually going to just talk about list balance. There was a lot of questions and comments the last time about, how much of each kind of unit do you put into your list? Where do your philosophies kind of sit around list building? I don't know. We've done videos before. Go and check them out about units, about spamming and stuff like that in armies. And
Stat
checks and those kind of skew lists. But what if you just are you're getting into the game and you just want to know how much of each do I kind of need to buy to get myself on the table and feel like I have a chance against most things? Kind of like what people will call it in tournaments, saying an all-comers list.
Yeah, which essentially just involves a balance of things in your list. You have a bunch of heavy-duty shooting, you have a bunch of close combat. You've got all the things that'll get you through a normal game.
Yeah, and this does apply to if your army, let's say you play demons, right?
Yes.
Demons do not have lots of shooting. The shooting they do have is decent, but there's not lots.
You can, if you skew it really hard, you can get lots of shooting in there, but it's not really how they're designed.
No, they're supposed to be a close combat army. That's kind of what they're meant to do. But you can still have don't think balanced army I need units that shoot and I need units that fight and I need vehicles and I need tanks. Demons don't even have vehicles and tanks. They've got monsters instead. And so don't think of it that way. Instead, think of it finding a balance of army roles. Yes. Right? Everything has a role it needs to play, kind of like a actors in a play, right? You need your lead actor and then you need your supporting actor and your comic relief and all that extra stuff.
Or a really cool band. Everybody, you got to have a really great singer. You got to have a guy who's just insane guitar riffs right off the bat. You know what I'm talking about.
I hate how I didn't see that coming.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that I didn't see it
That one
coming.
snuck up on you.
It did. The second you said, or a really cool band, my soul dropped to my shoes. You want to try and achieve balance in the roles, right? Some people have actually asked me, how much of each do you need? And I think there's a few different kinds of roles. You've got character units. These are units that support the units that you already have, whether that's through defensive buffs or offensive buffs or, different abilities and things like that. You also have your core units, something that we brushed upon in the last list building video. You need a few of those. Those are going to help you do kind of the more mundane things like hold objectives. They're going to also help you do maybe actions, things you don't want your really hard-hitting units to do, right? So you've got these kinds of units. They've got core abilities, and they're doing kind of the boring stuff. And we talked about having at least one or two of those last time.
And you also want something that's got some speed to it, because there's a lot of parts of the game that'll be, engage on all fronts. You go, I can't do that. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Unless I have a unit like this. Or something like scouts. Anything that can go up and down in the game
is perfect or moves really fast. How am I getting from point A to point B real quick? Next, how am I removing those major threats, right? So how is my army going to remove Chaos Knights? You need to think to yourself, how is my army going to accomplish those kinds of tasks? And so and then I think the last thing, because we kind of have characters, the core army units, and then we have those speed or secondary accomplishing units. We've got the hard hitting anti-tank or monster options. And then we also have, how do we get rid of infantry? And that's kind of divided into, chaff infantry and elite infantry. And so there really is like 6 things you kind of really have to be able to accomplish with a list. And most of the time, your list is never going to be amazing at all 6.
Right. You kind of have to corner one of the things or lean so heavily into one of the things that it shores up the others. Like if you're incredible at killing elite infantry, you can sometimes just put that firepower into
chaff and it works.
Basic tanks or heavy tanks and chaff and it might work.
Yep.
Though it might not work as much versus chaff.
Yeah. You want to try and have a little bit of everything, but
you kind of want to have a balance, but the ability for some things to
there's a little bit of overlap
and cover the holes that you might have.
Yeah, and there always is going to be a little bit of overlap. A plasma cannon is really good at killing things like Space Marines, elite infantry, but a plasma cannon is also D3 shots blast, and if you don't overcharge it, it works really well deleting Tau Fire Warriors.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to find like extra purpose in your things. Yeah. Don't get so focused on what it's supposed to do that you don't realize it can do many other things.
Yeah, exactly. Right. When people have asked me, how do I build a list? What do I do? How much of everything do I put in? It's almost like they really want like a finite, like number. Like, okay, should I put 25% of my list be like tank or vehicle or monster killing stuff, and should another 30% be objective killing, and another whatever it is? Like, how much of everything do you actually need?
That's an interesting question, and it's kind of hard to just give somebody that number, especially because you don't know their play style. Yeah. If anybody just asks what's the percentage, I would have to talk to them for a while and see what their typical lists look like, and then try to help them out with it. Because some people just naturally lean towards taking armor destroying weapons, or some people like combat. It is totally up to you and how you actually play the game to get more mileage out of every single unit you have on the tabletop.
Yeah, totally. And it is so dependent on play style. What would be your play style, Ian?
I don't know, really. I try to play I usually play a very aggressive game, but it sort of depends on what army I'm playing. Some of them you can get a little, like Hypercrypt, the game we just played. You can get a little fast and loose with your units because everyone's teleporting all over the place, and they're where they need to be to do the most damage that they possibly can. Whereas a lot of times with Orcs, I'm hiding big blobs of units because I know that there's, a repulsor on the other side of this.
And that's going to lift up a squad of Orcs.
Exactly. So if you push that aggressiveness, you're going to get tabled pretty quick.
Yeah.
So there's so many avenues to go down on advice and how do I play. It's more what army am I playing that usually it goes into, and then each stratagem and detachment. I think it's too deep of a rabbit hole to
try and go down.
To try to go down.
If we were to put it in like the simplest of terms, my heart says like of your 2,000 points. So like points are probably the easiest way to discuss that given percentage or whatever, right? And in my head, those 2,000 points can get, fairly easily divided into like, 4 500 sections or 5 400 sections. And like, I would say, depending on what your list does and how you really envision it going, like, I wouldn't spend more than 400 points on characters. Right? Because I think that like just starting
as a
all the
Space
way
Marine
down.
player,
as a Space Marine player, I wouldn't spend more than 400 points on characters, and really in anything like and unless your characters are hellish, like GSC and Guard both break this rule like crazy because their characters are so cheap and they need so many of them.
And like demons, you'd be like, oh, I'm taking the Lord of Change, and then I can't fit any other characters in there.
Well, the Lord of Change
you take the Lord
actually,
of Change, and you take
hold on, cool it,
Great Unclean One, and all of a sudden you're breaking your 400 point there.
With that being said, though, interestingly enough, those models kind of break the mold of what I mean when I say 400 points on characters.
Okay,
then do you know what I mean? So like, well, no, it's actually a really good like thing to bring up because sometimes an army like demons will have the Lord of Change or Fate Weaver or the Bloodthirster, and that is both your like hard hitting anti-vehicle, anti-elite infantry unit and a character for you. It's both, right? So that is allowed to sit in those two columns, right? So like if you were to combine those two columns together, I don't know if I'd put more than 800 points into buying big monsters, but some people like the big monster mash and the way that goes.
And
right?
that totally, I think, goes back to just how do you play the game? Do you like playing the big monsters, the big tanks, or those unkillable massive units, or do you like playing small little tactical things that can zip around the battlefield and be really annoying?
I don't love overcommitting. I really don't love the idea of overcommitting to things. Like when it comes to list design, my personal philosophy, that's why I say like I don't want to spend more than 400 points on characters, and I also don't really want to spend more than 400 points on my battle line units. I also don't really want to spend more than 400 or 500 points on, my anti-vehicle, specialized this thing, right? Like I like to really spread it out, right? Because I feel like my lists they may not be amazing at one thing, but they're definitely jacks of all trades. I think the only one that if I were to select a few that are like, in my opinion, the non-negotiables, it would be, when you're designing lists, 400 or 500 points, like, needs to go to how am I going to kill big stuff?
Yeah, that's something that
kind of a non-negotiable.
Right. Yeah.
You need to be able to kill monsters.
And how to modify a unit that's going to be able to do that. Like adding a lieutenant to like a squad of Hellblasters, all of a sudden they can just take anything in the game. They can just fire at anything in the game and put lethals on it.
Yeah, and it's great.
And just use Oath to fish for lethals, and all of a sudden you're
totally.
throwing
And with
tons of damage
strat support, you can help things punch up. I would say that a squad of Hellblasters, like a 5 or a 10-man blob of them, like those are that is like a hard hitting unit. It's not like a intercessor squad that has absolutely no hope in hell of actually killing like a soul grinder. Right? Like the intercessor squad's never going to do it. It's fine, right? But a Hellblaster squad, now that could actually pull it off, right?
So like after making one of these lists, getting in a couple games, and let's take the games that you learn the most from, which are the ones that you don't win, I find.
Yeah.
What do you do to adjust your list in a scenario to shore up your deficiencies? Would you get rid of like whole swaths of units and fully replace them, or would you try to make minor tweaks to keep the original design the same?
I would. My first, this is actually advice from Stephen Box over at Vanguard Tactics, and what he said I think was really true, and we'll dip into his well of wisdom right now. He's like, never do full, like when you're testing, when you are trying to learn, never do full swap outs. And the reason you never do a full swap out is because then it fundamentally changes what it is your list is actually trying to do. And all of the learning that you just did, you just undid. Because what's happening now is when you come to the table, it's as if you are at rep 1. You're not at rep 2 anymore. Right? Rep 2 is I'm taking basically the same list, maybe a couple of tweaks. We're trying it again, and we're just going to see how it goes down.
Then what falls into keeping it on rep 2?
So keeping it on rep 2, I think that could be, so like I've kind of divided all of these different sections of list building into these different, pieces. I would edit only 1 or 2 of those like necessary sections at a time. So for example, let's say I found myself like, I really am at a deficiency of anti-tank and it's not working. Okay, I need to add in some anti-tank. So in what other sections am I maybe bloated, and I can pare down a little bit to add in more anti-tank, and then we'll see we'll run it again, and we'll see how the list functions.
And I think that also goes with if you've had a loss, in what points did you lose? Did you lose because you didn't have enough stuff on the table?
Or you do 12 mortal wounds to a predator with your BS luck? Is that it?
Let's not talk about that now. Or like, did you lose because you took too much damage? Did you lose on primary, which is there's ways you can adjust your list to.
Yeah, maybe you need more core units.
Maybe you need more core
objectives.
Units. Maybe you need more speed. Did you lose on secondary? Yep. Maybe you need more outflanking units.
Yeah, maybe you need more.
It can change the whole design of your list. And sometimes tabling your opponent, you still lose.
Yep.
And then you have to go, okay, I maybe need to dial back the damage
Yeah.
to get more scoring, more secondaries.
Because they suck at doing that, right?
Right.
My second, like, non-negotiable. So anti-tank is something you really need. The big tanks do way too much damage. The second thing that I think is non-negotiable is you really need stuff to help you play the objectives.
Yeah.
Really badly.
Yeah.
And when I say play the objectives, I mean the secondary objectives, things like engage on all fronts. Do you do the thing that you're talking about? Do you have the speed to either get across the line or come down behind, in their deployment zones, in the corners, and to get those little cards for the extra points that you really need? And you need lots of little units that move quickly to do that, either deep strike or outflank or just have a built-in speed that's really ridiculous.
Yeah, like even just jump pack guys and make a charge against something that won't kill you, but you might not kill. But that's not why they're there. You just need to get across the line to get engaged.
Even if you don't end there, start by kind of evening things out. Like if you want to go as finite, like I do, where I look actually at the point values of how many units I'm adding into an army, or you're just gonna ballpark it and see how it goes. Totally fine methods, but start with an even spread. See how you like it, right? And of course, all of this is army dependent, right? But start with an even spread, see what happens, right, and then start to fiddle from there. Right? Or if you have like a very specific idea for a list, right? Start with the idea and then make an even spread after that, and away you go.
That's a great point too. Like if you have something in your mind that you want to do that you think is going to be really like interesting and fun, like I want to put Khan with a bunch of blade guard and have them in a repulsor. Cool. Start with that and then build a list around how to make that grow and make that effective on the tabletop.
Exactly, right?
If it's what you want to do, it wins with rule of cool.
It totally wins with rule of cool. But just, I guess the point of the video in this next phase of the list building like philosophy that we're talking about is just make sure that when you're building a list, you're making meaningful decisions about what goes in. Try your best not to just be like, well, I don't know, random. Like, I'm not sure how it'll work with the army, but whatever. No, like, try your best to really think about it. And of course, this is naturally model dependent, right? Like for the longest time, I only had enough models to play a 2,000 to 2,500 point game, and those are the models I had. Yeah. And it didn't matter what people said was good or wasn't good because I was putting myself through university, and those were the models I had, damn it, right? So that's the way that it goes. And we're all in different positions to make, those kinds of decisions and whatever. But when the time comes that you're able to pick up a couple more models, or your collection is able to expand, make meaningful decisions, right? And even things out a little bit to help you play the game in just maybe a little bit more balanced and robust way. Ultimately, though, however you decide to build a list, I would love to hear about it. So please, down in the comments section, what is your philosophy on building that balanced list style? And tell us about that so that we can keep the conversation going. From all of us here at Hyperspace Hobbies, this is...
My sacrifice!
Good night.
We got a problem with Creed?
This must have been happening.
You got a problem with Creed? You come talk to me.